to be here. And today, as Heather said, we're going to be talking about how cause organizations can create effective content, social media content for key audiences. Before we dive in, though, I always like to talk about my why. And from the time I was a really little girl, I always knew I wanted to do good in the world. And I believe I got that from my parents who, for them, faith was always a part of their lives, and it became a part of my life from a very early age as well. And they were always looking for opportunities to serve others, whether that be pulling up an extra chair at the dinner table or giving someone a ride to work, and many other ways they served. But they passed that desire on to me. And that desire took me all the way to the other side of the world. And you'll see the pictures on the left. That's my dad and I. It's one of my favorite pictures, and this is a good excuse to use it when I talk about my parents. And then on the right is some ladies I had the privilege of working with when I lived over in East Asia for a number of years. And now I collaborate with mission-driven organizations who are also making a difference, who are doing good in the world. And I work with them to create effective content that communicates the difference that they're making. And so together we can maximize their positive impact in the world. And that's very exciting work for me. So as Heather said, I'm Johnson Novara. I'm a content strategist, copywriter, and content creator. And again, I work with mission-driven businesses to maximize their impact with effective content. This is my contact information, my email address, and my website. You can also look for me on LinkedIn. That's where I show up most of the time online, and I'm happy to connect with you there. So feel free to look for me and reach out to connect there. So enough about me. Let's talk about you and about our topic for today. So we're going to Sorry, went the wrong direction there. We're going to look at this from three different angles. One is building relationships with social media, then avoiding common mistakes that we make with content creation of all kinds, including social media. And then we're going to put it all together with some practical exercises. So first, can I get, I'd like to ask you a question. How many of you, and you could just drop your answer in the chat. How many of you think that social media has anything to do with networking? And Heather, you can help me see who's saying what in the chat.
Sierra has said yes, it does. Joyce Fleck says yes. Sharon, Matt, they say yes. Everyone is saying yes, it definitely does.
Okay, so now if you could help me and just briefly, maybe one sentence or phrase, how are the two related?
Connecting people's interests.
Okay, very good. What else?
I think everybody else is waiting for you to provide them. Oh, we've got another one. Find others who are interested in our cause, bring our organization to their attention.
Okay, very, very good. So it's great. You guys are on the right track with me. So I think sometimes it's easy to think of social media content creation as it's kind of something to check off the to-do list instead of something to do with building relationships. And it can even, if it's something we don't like to do very much, it can sometimes feel like a chore. And I would say maybe all of us, when it's on our to-do list, it might feel like that sometimes. But today I want us to really think about how it is like networking. It is about relationship building. So let's think about it that way and set the tone for today's webinar. So to start, we want to consider how to plan your social media content so it fits into your greater networking goals. And you can start building relationships with the right folks. So when you're setting networking goals, the best way to create attainable goals, it really starts with some basics. And the basics are the who, what, when, where, and why. So let's just break these down a little bit. So who is it that you're wanting to meet? Is it community partners? Is it volunteers, donors, church leaders, other faith-based groups? When you're setting your networking goals, you really want to hone in on who it is that you're trying to meet. And then what is it that they need to hear from you? What is the message that you need to communicate to them? When's the best time to reach them with the message that you have to share? And then where are they online? Are they on LinkedIn? Are they on Facebook, Instagram, even TikTok? Where, once you know the who you're trying to meet, then you want to think, okay, where do they hang out? Where are they talking to each other? And then why? Why is this relationship with this particular audience important for your organization? When you can answer these questions, it'll help you start setting networking goals so that you can reach and build relationships with the right people, the right audience. So building relationships, a key to online relationships, and you guys may already feel like you know this, but it's really to treat them the same way you treat in-person relationships. So be the organization that gives first. Be the one that offers the most value. And when you're interacting with people online, do it as naturally and authentically as if you were sitting down to a cup of coffee with those people. And just treat those relationships with the same, just the same approach that you would take if you were in person. And when you can get those goals right, those networking goals right, so you're targeting the right people, you're engaging with them naturally and authentically, then that's when we can start really connecting with what I like to call right fit clients. So the audiences that we really want to connect with, the ones that are our best fit. I'm going to stop just a minute before we move on to some of the mistakes that we can make with content, and just ask, does anyone have questions so far, or is this making sense? And Heather, again, if you'll help me with the chat.
Yep, no problem.
Is everybody good?
I think we're good.
Okay.
One question here. How do you assess the best social media platform? That's one question.
That's a great question. And it's really a matter of knowing who that you're trying to reach and where they're hanging out. So for example, for my business and my audience, I tend to find clients more on LinkedIn than on Instagram. So I don't really have an Instagram account for my business. I really focus on LinkedIn. So so it might take some testing and some asking questions, some exploring to find out where the people are that you're trying to talk to. And they might be on different platforms, right? Depending on your organization. You might have some folks who are hanging out on LinkedIn. You might have other folks hanging out on Facebook and others on Instagram or TikTok. So it's important to find out where they are so that you know which platforms to use. I hope that answers your question.
We have one other question that's come in. What if your director wants to connect with 4 different audiences?
Yeah, then that's kind of what I was saying. So you want to have a plan for each audience, right? So so each audience would be a different who. And so you would ask these questions for each audience. So who is the audience? Then what is it that audience needs from you? Where is that audience online? And ask all those questions for each audience and let that guide you for each audience. Does that make sense?
It makes sense to me.
Okay. All right. And we'll have more time for questions too later. So as you think of more questions as you go, Heather's going to be monitoring the chat for us, and we can get to them later as well. So we've set the foundation with thinking of social media content like networking, like building relationships. That's really what it's all about. Now, let's talk about the mistakes that it's easy for us to make with creating content. And we want to avoid them if at all possible. But mistake number one is not having a content plan. So what happens if we don't have a plan, we can be really stressed and kind of confused because we end up maybe posting randomly. We haven't thought through the who, the what, the where, and all of those questions. And so we just post maybe when inspiration hits, or we just post kind of randomly, hoping that something will work. But the trouble with that approach is we may or may not be presenting our organizations all that well if we're just posting randomly. The point of creating content, social media content, and other content is to build trust, build those relationships with our audience. We want to connect with people that could be our customers or our donors or our partners. We want to improve conversions, turn them into lifelong partnerships. We want to generate leads with our content. But again, if we haven't really planned it, we just end up posting whatever comes to mind. And there's really no guarantee that our content will be as effective as it could be. So what if instead of posting kind of randomly, we had a plan that lined up with those networking goals we established, the who's, the what's, the where's, and all of those things. And that way, when we sit down to create content, we actually know exactly which audience we're talking to. Of those 4 audiences someone mentioned, you know what to say to each of those 4 audiences. You know where they are, you know where to post what you're saying to them. If you can do that, how good does that feel, right? It feels a lot less stressful and a lot less confusing. And I always say, we wouldn't build a house without a plan. So why would we create the most important marketing material for our businesses with no plan for it? Or why would we try presenting our organizations to the world without a plan for how to present it? So not planning first for our social media content is mistake number one. And the best way to present our organizations to the world is to plan the content so we're targeting and the exact people that we really, really want to meet and want to talk to and want to build relationships with. So mistake number 2 is not addressing clients' pain. And I'm using clients to talk about all those people in your audience that you're trying to connect with and build relationships with. So without a client focus, our content becomes misdirected. It's easy to talk about ourselves a lot in our marketing. That's maybe the first thing we're tempted to do. And it's okay. On social media, people like to see personal posts as well sometimes. But overall, our clients really want to hear about them. They want us to talk about their problems, and they want to know that we can solve whatever problems they're having or whatever pain those problems are causing. So my question I want you to think about is, do you know the pain that you resolve for your audience? Even when you've got 4 different audiences, which pain do you solve for each of those audiences? I'm going to give you 2 examples, and then I'll ask you guys to give me some examples of the pain that you resolve as well. So 2 of the biggest pains that I resolve for my clients are the time crunch that they feel trying to get all their marketing content done. I give them their time back because they can just hand it off to me. I can create the content, give it back to them, and it's all done. So they get their time back. So that's one pain that I resolve for them. I also help save them money because they don't have to hire a full-time marketer. So working with me is an investment, but it's also a fraction of the cost of a full-time marketing employee. So I save clients both time and money. Those are two pains, and there are others as well, but those are two of the main pains that I resolve. So I'm going to get you to put in the chat, and I'm going to get Heather to help me. What pains does your organization resolve for those in your audience? Who knows what pains your organization resolves? Just post in the chat real briefly.
All right. So what pains does your organization resolve? I think these are great questions for people to think through. Okay, Brooke has said, we resolve troubles and fears in sharing the gospel by teaching simple gospel tools. Sierra
Great.
says, we provide community, family for military away from their family.
Great. Great. Okay. Yeah, those are great. You guys have really thought through to the depth, not just a problem, but the pain that people have, fear, and the need for community. That's great. And my next question would be, does your social media content address that pain? So that's one thing to think about. If it's not addressing it, that's mistake number 2 that is easy for us to make. Mistake number 3 is not creating content consistently enough. So inconsistent content equals missed opportunities, really, just period. Because creating social media and other content is one of the easiest and most cost-effective ways to stay in front of your audiences. And you might say, okay, but what does consistent mean? I get that question a lot. And I believe that if you have 10 people kind of who do what I do here lined up together, we might all give you different answers, because I've heard everything from 1 time a week to 5 times a day, right? And don't take any breaks on Saturday and Sunday. But so what I tell my clients, though, is something in between all that. It's ask yourself, how many times can I post on social media and be consistent with it? So if your organization, if you're the person doing the social media for your organization, and you've only got time to do, 2 posts a week on one platform, then start with that. If you have time to do 3 posts a day on 2 platforms, then start there. But what you don't want to do is because we had a webinar about it today, and maybe you're not posting but once or twice a week, and now you say, oh, well, I'll post 3 times a day, every day, forever. Because that's a really lofty goal, right? To jump from not very much to all the time. So just think about what you really can do and do it consistently. It's better to show up twice a week, every week for 52 weeks, than to show up 5 times a day for 2 weeks in a row and then not show up for 3 months. So you want to be consistent. Content marketing is a long game, and consistency is one of the keys to its success. So just show up consistently so people expect that you're going to be there. And remember, you can always outsource social media marketing if your organization allows that. But if you're the one that's doing it, or you have a team that's doing it, then set aside a block of time. Let's say next week is the last week in February. So Monday or Tuesday, set aside a few hours with yourself or your team and work on the plan for the content for March, and just get it all done and scheduled during that time. And so then you can not think about it as much and just spend your time engaging and not necessarily creating the content. So whatever way you choose, whether it's just a few times a week or a few times a day, just to be consistent with it. That's one of the things that's most important. And not being consistent is mistake number 3. Then I have a bonus mistake or a reminder. Just remember to analyze the results. We're not going to get in too deeply in Google Analytics or anything like that. you may or may not know as much about how to analyze the back end. But there are tools like Google Analytics and the tools in each social media platform to help you know how well your content's working. But the important thing is to pay attention to what's working and what isn't, and then do more of what's working. Because what's working means that your audience is engaged with that. It's information that they're interested in. So keep giving them that kind of information. So you're building on that relationship, those relationships. And if you don't know as much about tracking the back end of it, at least be paying attention to the likes, the comments, and be engaged, when people are commenting, comment back. And how many times people reshare your post, if it's getting reshared at all. And again, notice when that happens, and do more content like the ones that are shared more. Okay, so let's review a little bit. First, we talked about social media marketing as networking and as relationship building, to really let that be the foundation for what you're doing. And then the mistakes that you want to avoid. So the first mistake to avoid is not having a plan. So instead, okay, let's create a plan. Mistake number 2, not addressing clients' pain. So definitely address it. Mistake number 3 is not being consistent in creating content. So definitely be consistent, and then keep up with what's working and what's not. So analyze the results. I'm going to stop again and see if there are any questions, and then we're going to do some practical exercises to help us kind of put this all together and bring it all together for you. So are there any other questions there, chat in the chat, Heather?
Questions yet, but there was Joyce had responded to the last one about how does your organization address a pain point, and she said, we share the gospel in places you can't go, which I thought was a good one for mission organizations. Yeah,
that is awesome. Yeah, that's great.
Here's a question from Sherry. How do you suggest managing audience overlap in one social media platform?
Oh, that's a great question. I think you can do it with a good plan, because there are likely things that both audiences are concerned about, right? So you could address those things in individual posts, so you'd be reaching everybody. But you can also address the pain points of each audience in other posts. So it would just be a matter of planning it well, and maybe you do more posts about the things that they all have in common, but then make sure that you're also addressing the things that they don't have in common. Does that make sense?
Yep, she says thanks.
Great. All right. Any other questions there before we do the practical exercises?
Nothing else is in the chat right now.
Okay. All right. So what we're going to do next is analyze our audiences. And it sounds like some of you already have this down pretty good, but we're going to try this exercise anyway. And hopefully you'll get some more light about who your right fit clients are. So I want you to think about, just really briefly, and you don't have to, again, don't think about it too much, just the first 10 things that come to your mind. Make a list of 10 people or organizations that your organization has served. And that could be a lot of different relationships depending on your organization and who the audience is. But just make a quick list of 10 people or organizations that you've served. And I'm going to give you a minute. I'm going to be quiet and let you write it, and I'll come back in about a minute. Okay. I'm going to assume everybody is maybe almost finished if you're not quite. And the next thing I want you to do is grade, just old fashioned A, B, C, D, that list. So put an A, B, or C, D beside of each one. And the way you grade them is that A's are going to be the folks that were a perfect fit for your organization in every way. The B's are going to be a little less than perfect, but not bad. The C's are going to start to slip up a little bit. Maybe the relationship used to be working very well, but it's not going as well now for some reason. And then the D's are not really good fits. Maybe the personal organization, you kind of keep them on for any number of reasons, but it's not really a good fit. So just take a minute to put an A, B, C, or D by each person or organization that you listed. And I'm going to give you another minute for that. All right. So I'd like to ask now if anyone has any aha moments already from just doing that part of the exercise. And I'll give you another question as well, but did anybody have any aha moments you'd like to share? You can just drop it in the chat. And if not, that's okay as well.
I'm watching the chat. Nothing is posted yet.
Okay. All right. We're going to keep going then. The next thing to do is really analyze the ones that hopefully you've got some A's listed, right? The A's are the keys to your messaging. They're the who in the networking goals that we talked about earlier. And they're the ones that are a perfect fit for your organization. So think about what the A's have in common. How do they find your organization? What is the relationship between them and your organization as well? How do they hear about you? What makes them a perfect fit for your cause, your organization's needs? Anybody have some feedback you'd like to share?
I think this is back to the aha moments, but Joyce has said by the slow responses of pastors, they're probably not the best fit or they need a different approach.
Okay, great. That's great insight. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else?
Sierra said for us, our A's are all directly tied to the military.
Okay, so you knew that was a perfect fit already from what you shared earlier, but that makes sense. That's great. Any others?
Sherry said, perfect fit are those who are passionate about our mission.
Very good. Okay, great. All right. So the key is going to be to take this insight that you just discovered and use it to guide your social media planning. Okay. So the A's are that perfect fit. Some of you have seen that some of the people that you thought might be a perfect fit are not as much of a fit as you thought. That's good information. So now you can turn your content toward the people who are a better fit. And what you want to do is think about your A people as that who, again, in the networking goals. So who are those people? Go ahead and flesh that out. Where are they hanging out online? What is it that you share with them that really resonates with them? Sorry. And you want to keep sharing more content like that because you want to attract those people. So think about what you say to those people that are your perfect fit, and use that to guide how you're posting on social media so that you attract more people like them. Any questions about that piece?
No questions.
Okay. All right. And you can do this repeatedly, this exercise. Let's say you tweak your social media content a little bit, and 6 months from now, you want to see again if there's any other clients that have become, or any other sort of personas that have become a good fit. You could reanalyze the last 10 people you've served and what are their similarities, so that you can just continually tweak your social media content to be meeting the needs of those people that you really want to build a relationship with. All right, our final exercise is to grade yourself, okay? So we graded our clients, now let's grade ourselves. Use this content checklist, and I'm going to give you a minute to think about it. You probably already know, as I've been talking, you probably already know what you're doing well and what you might need to improve. But let's just run through this checklist in your head and take some notes, and grade yourself. Are you planning your social media content ahead of time? Or are you just kind of shooting in the dark, hoping that it hits the right place, the right target? Are you addressing the pains of your ideal clients, those people that are a perfect fit, or those organizations that are a perfect fit? Are you consistent with your content? Are you showing up on those social media platforms where your audiences are consistently? And then are you analyzing the results so that you can do more of what works and let go of what's not working? So take a minute to just assess yourself, and I'll get some feedback from you in just a minute. All righty. Would anyone like to put in the chat and just share? Let's talk about what you're doing well first. Just drop in the chat what you're doing well.
Well, we have a couple who have responded with things that they want to improve.
Okay, well, we'll talk about that.
All right. So Brooke has said, need to analyze results more. We definitely have posts that work and posts that don't. Analyzing what works is needed.
Okay.
Sharon says, we haven't reviewed our plan recently. It's time to reassess.
Okay, awesome. That's great. All right. Yeah, because planning will help you definitely get where you want to be, right? If you don't have a plan, then you may not get where you actually hope to get with your content. Very good. All right. So what are you all doing well?
Sierra says, we have a plan and tweak as necessary. We are hitting on clients' pain and see it in some of the comments of parents being so thankful to know there's someone like us out there.
That's awesome. That's great. Yeah. All right. Anybody else? What are y'all doing well?
Brooke shares, we're good at consistently posting and planning, and we've become to address clients. We need to address clients' pain more. I think that's what she means there.
Okay.
Oh, we've come to address clients' pain more. Yeah. Good.
Okay. Great. All right. Are there any other questions from anything we've talked about today?
Julie, I just thought I'd ask, I think a lot of people who are on here today struggle with not having enough people or time available to do communications and marketing the way that they would want. And
Right.
as you've looked through some of these things, for people with small teams or just doing some things part-time, what's something you think helps them most?
Um, yeah, I think maybe the part about just being consistent, even if you can't do as much as you would like, because in the end, you want to just being there regularly is going to win out, whether that's once a week, because that's what you can do, or more than that. But what you don't want to do is let it all go when you're too busy, and so there be big gaps in your social media posting, because when you have someone new that hears about you from, even if it's word of mouth, say, they're going to look at your social media feeds to see what you're up to. And so if you haven't posted anything in the last 3 months, then maybe they're like, well, I don't know if I'd want to support that organization or not. So I think when you have a small team, you don't have as much time, and your budget is small, so maybe you don't feel like you can outsource. Just being consistent in a small way is better than letting it go. I don't know. Is that helpful, Heather?
Yeah, that's great. Sierra is asking, what are the most important metrics to watch in your opinion?
Yeah, if you can watch, so on like the back end of LinkedIn, it will tell you, of course, you can see likes and shares and those kind of things, but it'll tell you percentage of engagement. So, for example, I might have a post that I get, I don't know, hundreds of views on, but one comment. And so my engagement level is still a little bit lower for that post than, say, something that I got fewer views on, but 20 comments, right? So if you can pay attention to the engagement level, I think that's going to be the most important one. Likes and shares and those kind of things are important too, but the engagement level, I think, is the best number to check if you're keeping up with it regularly. Other questions, Heather?
We don't have any other questions. Oh, wait, here, Brooke has just posted one. I'd love to hear your thoughts on struggling to figure out the algorithms of social media. We post consistently, but have low engagement and likes and views. Often looking at the analytics, barely anyone has seen it.
Okay, that would be probably a much longer conversation. I'd want to look a little bit more at what you're posting and see what the reason is. Maybe, do you have, like, these are the questions that I would ask if we were having a conversation. So, do you have a lot of followers on those pages as well, or are your number of followers lower? So if you have a lower number of followers, maybe invite people to follow you, so immediately you'll get more eyes on the content. The algorithms do change frequently, which I'm sure you know already. And so sometimes it's tricky, right? But one thing that you can do is change up the kind of content you're posting, and you might already be doing this. But so sometimes on LinkedIn, for example, the algorithm actually likes posts that are just text rather than posts that have pictures, which to me is kind of odd. But try mixing it up a bit, where you have some shorter text kind of posts that are just text only. And then you have graphics, and then throw some videos in there. So see if that helps. But that's kind of a generic answer to what could be a more specific answer if I could look more deeply at what you're actually doing. It's a little bit hard to answer without seeing your content. So I hope that's helpful a little bit. All right. If there are no other questions, again, my name is Julie Novara, and I work with mission-driven businesses to maximize their impact with effective content. I'd love to connect with you all on LinkedIn, so feel free to look for me there, and we can start building some relationships. All right. It's been great being here with you today too. So thank you again, Heather. It's been a privilege to come and share today.
That's great. Thank you very much, Julie. Just one closing comment from Sherry. She says, it's my understanding that people don't take time to hit like anymore. So we look at the number of followers to know the eyeballs we're getting, which is a good comment.
That is a great comment. Yep. That's a great comment. Thank you, Sherry.
Julie, your email address once more.
Yeah, I can.
Is it julie@johnsonwrites.com?
johnsonwriter.com. Yep.
Oh, awesome. Thanks. And if any of you would like to reach out to me, I'll put my email address on in the chat here. Thank you so much for what you shared with us today, Julie. This webinar has been recorded and will be available to Mission Nexus members on the Mission